Good afternoon, everyone, from Cedar Creek Bottoms Farmstead. This is Friday's Fireside Tales. Back to Creepy Mountain. Hope everyone's had a good week this week. We've had some very good beneficial rain here in the Sylacauga area this week. We really needed. Got very dry, so I was very proud that we got some good rain come in. Going to heat up for the next week, so me and Rebecca will get real busy with the farm again. And I know everyone's looking forward to this Memorial Weekend, and I want everybody to remember what we're really celebrating Memorial Day for. I know a lot of folks will be going to the river and lakes and ocean and barbecuing, but it's really about the servicemen and women who died for our country. So I hope that everyone remembers that. Going back to Creepy Mountain. Like I told you in last week's video, I gave you a little history of Creepy Mountain. And then, we had Mr. Tall Banco. His name's really Mr. Billy White. Met me and Keith up there one evening, right at dark. We went and made a call with an elk call, and of course got a good response. So that put me and Keith on the path that, yes, we had these boogers on the club. That, of course, me and him being new to the Bigfoot world, we really didn't know what to do. So, talking with Mr. Tall about different things we could do, and of course he said the best thing to do would be just start going up there some at night and making vocals and see if we could get responses. Told us about the tree knocking, the whoops, them whistling, that we would see their eyes pop up sometimes, especially like if we built a fire and they got up close, that sometimes you'd see their eye shine off a fire or off a flashlight. Similar, to a deer or a dog, those type of reflections. He basically said, just you're gonna have to get up there and just learn from trial and error, which me and Keith did. But thinking about that, when he went to telling me about the whoops and the tree knocking, made me go back, think that probably had a good many encounters and just didn't really realize it up there. And that may account for some things that went on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. Our club, like I said, we formed a club in 1996. I had hunted this property off and on all my life, mostly coon hunting and deer hunting. About the time that I got married to my first wife, I had kind of slowed down on coon hunting. One of my better dogs had passed away. Of course, getting married, starting a family, puts a damper, on things like that. So I slowed down on the coon hunting. Plus, one of my buddies, Larry, he was working out of town a lot during that time period, so he wasn't able to go. And Keith had a good bit going on. So there for a little time period, I quit coon hunting. But another friend of mine had two boys that was about the same age as my stepdaughter at the time, which would have been when we started back coon hunting. She would have probably been around 12. So that would have probably been around 2002. 2001, 2002. His boys wanted to coon hunt, so he went and bought a dog, and of course wanted us to go with them some, and so I ended up going back to a guy that I knew that kept good quality dogs, bought a puppy from him, and we started training. So we started going back up on the club because he was a member of the same club too. And I noticed sometimes we would hear these tree knocks. Didn't really realize what I was hearing or what they were. I know on several occasions we've heard that, even with my friend. We just hear that pop down in the woods, and we'd be like, what was that? Or we would hear the distinct sound sometimes of something getting broke somewhere. So we're probably having some encounters. I've heard the whoops before. Didn't really know what that was. And didn't really think about it a whole lot. I mean, I didn't really put a lot of thought in it. I know there was 2 times that really stood out before 2007. Was one night me and just my daughter went hunting. And we went down there on that number 9 road, and of course, this dog, he wasn't a puppy no more. He was about full grown. He was starting to tree and hunt on his gone good, and we just wanted to get out of the house for a couple of hours, and she wanted to carry him hunting. So we went up there, and it was, I think January by then, February. I mean, we were in dead winter, so there wasn't no leaves on the trees. Pretty chilly that night. And I remember we parked there. Our club had a little shooting range where we could go sight in our rifles, and right below that area was a good hardwood bottom with a creek in it. And you could go there about any other time and tree a coon. They just, really used that creek in there. So me and her pulled up there at night. It wasn't long after dark, maybe an hour after dark. So that'd have been about 6 o'clock probably, somewhere in that neighborhood. And we turned him loose, and I noticed not long after we'd been there that he was acting funny a little bit. Just kind of noticed that, and I'm sorry about the wind today. I hope y'all are able to hear me over the wind. This little cool front coming in. I think it's supposed to be down in the 50s again, not here in central Alabama. Which to me, I can live with that, because I don't like it when it gets that 70, 80 degrees at night and that humidity. But so I'm gonna take it as I can get it. Anyway, I knew he was acting funny, and didn't really, I said, well, something's going on. Anyway, he finally struck a coon maybe a couple of 100 yards away, and I could tell it was a cold track. And what I mean by cold track is, the coon had been through there earlier during the day and left the track. Excuse me, I'm sorry about coughing. If you've ever hunted a whole lot with dogs, especially trailing dogs, you can usually tell the difference after a little while when one's cold trailing and when he's got something hot. If he's got something hot, he's excited. I mean, he's going to bark every breath and move on with it. If it's a cold track, he's going to bark every now and then and do their little locating call. And so, it's kind of what he started. I could tell he was cold trailing and just the way he was acting. Well, this went on for about 30 minutes, and he stayed in a general area. And I knew he was trying to work that coon track, and he just wasn't having no good success with it. And in the meantime, I kept hearing stuff moving around in the woods, and I was like, first I thought armadillo, because armadillos just had started showing up here. And I will say this, there's one thing you don't see much on our club. I don't know why. I can go to some places around here and the places that eat up with armadillos, but that hunting club does not eat up with armadillos. I wonder if the boogers up there is keeping them thinned out. And another thing you don't see up there much is possums. But, and that may, over time, I've wondered about that. But anyway, so I thought something may have been dog over there playing after some kind of bug or something. But I thought maybe it's an armadillo moving through the leaves or a coon was slipping through. But typically, coon hears a dog, they're going the other way. So, and deer typically, wouldn't do that either. Most of the time, they wouldn't run off, but they wouldn't head toward the dog. And I noticed a couple times this kind of headed toward the dog, and then I heard stuff all around me and her sitting there. Didn't really say nothing to her. I just kind of kept my mouth shut, and I, kept paying attention to what was going on. Well, finally, the old dog, he finally, I guess, figured, kind of worked the track out, and I could tell it got a lot hotter, and he started moving, and he went up beside this hill, and he sit down treed. So, of course, when a dog trees, you don't want to run right to him. Unless it's an old dog. Now, old dog, he pretty much done learned what he's got to do, but so him being a young dog, I wanted him to tree for a few minutes. Well, I noticed during that time he would stop a couple times while he was treeing. He'd just get quiet up there, and now, what is he doing? Now, a lot of times a dog will tree and they'll come off of it and they'll make a big circle sometimes and double check themselves to make sure that coon hadn't jumped into another tree and come out another tree or something like that. So I said, well, he's learning to double check himself. Well, he'd go back to treeing, so I didn't really think nothing else about it. So after about 15-20 minutes, I told her, come on, let's go up there and see what he's got. And as we were heading into the woods, I could still hear stuff walking around. And I could tell something was paralleling me as we was heading up there to that dog. And this paralleled me all the way up there. And I never did shine my light that way. And I had a good light back then. I had a Bama light that a local guy used to build lights. And at the time, it was one of the best lights you could get a hold of. I mean, you could light the world up with this thing. I don't forget how much candle power it was, but it put out a white light, and I mean, you could light the world up. But I didn't shine it that way. I just kept on heading to the dog, got up to the dog, and went to looking up in the tree, and I couldn't find a coon nowhere, and I looked in the other trees around, and plus I kept hearing this walking, and then I noticed the dog would stop and just turn, look out in the woods, and like he was watching something. He never growled or bristled up, so I was like, I said, this is weird. I ain't never had this really happen before. So anyway, I finally put the leash on him, and we started heading back to the truck. And I had opened a Dr. Pepper, one of the bottles type, and I had set it on my dog box when we had left. When we come back, I noticed that it was laying in the back of the truck. And I thought that was odd. It wasn't no wind, and I could still, as I was loading up the dog, I could still hear it walking around us. So that was one time that I think we were encountering the Bigfoot and just didn't realize it. Of course, we got in the truck, left, come on home, but I didn't really think nothing else about it no more. I think I mentioned one of my friends about there was something, kept fooling around. Of course, he didn't know what it was either. So, and I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but it was just strange. The air was different that night. I mean, it was like my body was in a different state of awareness or alert, I guess you would say. But the second time we had carried, I was in a coon hunting club, and if anybody knows anything about the coon hunting clubs, what you do is it's just a bunch of coon hunters that form a club, and you start having hunts, usually weekly hunts, usually a Friday night when most people try to do it, and you gather up somewhere, and however many hunters show up, if he's you know, 8, 10, 12, 20, however many people show up, and then you draw lots and you compete against 3 other people. In other words, if you had 12 people show up, you'd have 4 teams. Excuse me, 3 teams. If you had 16, you'd have 4. They usually try to do 4s, and then you'd have a judge that'd go with you. So that night, I went to one of the club hunts, and they asked me, could we go up on my club? And I said, sure. So me and 3 other guys and a judge went up on our club, and this night I had my smaller daughter with me, middle daughter. At the time, she would have been, she would have probably been around 6 or 7 years old. So she went that night with us. And this is still prior to me knowing Bigfoot's on the club. So we went up, and I carried them to the same general area where me and my stepdaughter, but we went down a couple hundred more yards, because on down the creek, there's a big holler that splits off the creek and runs back in toward the middle of the mountain with a branch on it. And I'd treed coons in there several times, so we went down there and turned loose. Of course, all 4 dogs took off the creek and hit a coon hot. And me and 2 other guys, my dog went up there and treed, and another guy dog treed, and we went up there. And what you want to do is whoever the first dog that trees and stays on trees pretty much the winner. So we headed up this holler to go to the tree, and of course you got to make sure there's a coon in the tree. So if you don't, they dock you for that. And so we were heading up the holler, and I noticed about halfway a smell hit us, and even a couple of other guys commented, "Ooh, what is that smell?" And of course it was that old, I call it rotten garbage, sewage, mud, wet dog, dead, decomposing meat smell. I don't know how to describe. I mean, it's the best way to describe it. It's all like it's all in one. I mean, it's just a strange smell. Anyway, I noticed that, and the other guys even said something about it. And of course, my middle daughter was walking with me, so we walked on up there to the tree, and 3 of the dogs was on the tree. 1 dog was standing back. And, we shined the tree, ain't found a coon in that tree yet. So, we go ahead and put the dogs on the leash, come on out, because also on them type of hunts, you have a time, and you have to be back at the clubhouse, within that time. So we were pushing that time, so we was coming on out. And on the way out, 2 of the guys were in front of me and the other guy and Katie. And as we was walking out through there, I kept hearing something following us. And, it just struck me odd. And I even mentioned that guy. I said, "You hear something following?" He said, "I sure do, buddy." He said, "I hear something back here." He said, "I don't know what that is." And even his dog would turn around and look. Well, the other 2 guys got a good bit ahead of us. They was a lot younger, and they was walking fast, and they got onto their truck, and we were still probably 100 yards away. And I remember this just like it was yesterday. On the ridge behind the road, on the other opposite side of the road from where we went in, there was a howl that come off that top of that hill up there that I had never heard before, that I could recall hearing. And me and that guy, I said, "What in the world was that?" And he said, "Man, I ain't never heard that before." Well, we get on up to the truck, and them other 2 guys and the judge is already up there, and they're talking. They said, "Man, what was that up here?" I said, "Man, I don't know. I don't know what that was." And one of the guys said, "Man, I ain't being ugly, Mark, but he said, I don't know if I want to hunt up here again." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, that smell down there in the woods." He said, "I ain't never smelt nothing like that." And then this howling up here on this hill. I mean, it done it a couple of times, and it shut up. And he said, "Man, it's just eerie feeling." I said, "Yeah, I agree with you." I said, you know, like I told you before, I'd heard the whoops and I've heard the tree knocks, but that's the first time I'd heard something just make a racket like that, you know. And, you know, we went on back to the clubhouse, and one of them boys, you know, started telling the other guys about it. And of course they said, well, you probably heard a panther, or you know, maybe I heard a coyote that sounded, you know, of course people, and that's really, you're going to always try to, you know, make something, you know, that you know what it is. You know, so that was another night that was just real strange. That had been probably around 2002 or 3, maybe 4. I can't remember, but in that time period. So there's 2 instances that I remember very well before me and Keith and Mr. Tall realized there was boogers on that club. And I remember Mr. Tall asking me, have I ever heard the whoops? And I told him, yeah. And he said, well, that's a Bigfoot. And of course he told us about smells. And I told him, I said, well, I have smelt some stuff before in my time. And that was in some other places I'd coon hunted. So there's 2 instances that even before we realized we were probably encountering them. It takes me back also to a club member that I remember one Saturday morning. We were getting ready to run our dogs, and this was before I knew about Bigfoot. Was making a comment about a couple of days before he had come up there hunted, and he went into a holler on the club that nobody hunts too much. It's real steep in there. Nobody goes in there much just because if you killed a deer, it's going to be rough to get him out of there. And I think that guy was just, I think that you know, he was just exploring new land. I think he was off that day, and had been in the club a couple of years, so I think, you know, he was doing more exploring than he really was hunting. And he told us, he said, you know what's strange? He said, I come across a pile of bones down there. He said, I mean a pile. He said, I ain't just talking about, you know, like one deer. He said, I'm talking about dozens. He said, I have never seen that many bones and piled up in one place. And he said, of course, squirrels and other animals had chewed on a lot of them, but he said it's just like somebody's been bringing their deer carcasses here and dumping them. But he said, Lord, he said, why would somebody drag it down here this far into this place? He said, because you got to go up a bluff, get back to the road. And he said, it just don't make no sense that somebody would, you know, pile their deer carcasses there, you know. And, you know, and I asked him, of course, where the location was, and he told me, and I said, well, that is a rough area. I said, you know, I don't, you know, in my mind, you know, I wouldn't think anybody would do that. So later on, I would go check that area out, and I did find that area. This was after we learned that Bigfoot was on the club, and did go into that area, and I did find some bones. And there was a good many of them there. A lot of them, you know, had done been chewed up a good bit, but there was pieces left. And the place did have an eerie feeling in there, so may have found a place they were bringing their deer, eating them. I don't know. You know, I can't prove that. It was just very odd, the location. Plus, it was on part of the club nobody hardly goes to, so just because of the terrain. In fact, nowadays nobody hunts that area. Now, there's deer in that area because we've run our deer dogs through there and run deer out of there and everything, but it's just a rough area for a man. And there's several places on the hunting club like that. There's just nobody hunts in areas, and a lot of it's got the mountain laurel in it, so it's thick. You can't see it. It's rocky bluffs, real deep hollows. I mean, you go in there in the middle of the daytime, it's still dark looking because the sun's not able to penetrate it very well. I mean, it does in the winter some because the leaves are off the trees, but so there was another thing that prior to knowing Bigfoot was there that showed up that was strange. And while I'm telling you this, I'm just trying to show you that prior to us figuring out Bigfoot was there, we are already having some experiences. I remember several other club members talking about camping at the lake before and weird things happening over there. And it reminds me of two other things that went on with me and my first wife up there. She loved to hunt. She was outdoorsman type. And this was when we first got married, before we had any kids, which she had a daughter, but we went up there one late Saturday afternoon, go hunt around the lake that you'll see in video down in, coming in soon. I'm gonna go do some of my stuff from the hunting club. We went up there one Saturday afternoon, and I went on the upper end of the lake, and she went down below the spillway down in the holler, and I told her where to go sit. Now, about 200 yards down the holler, there's an old rock foundation. We don't know if it's a grave site or if it's a where a whiskey still may have been one time, or something was built down in this holler. It kind of flattens out down in there and gets into be a big area, and there's two more hollers that feed in, so there's little fingers coming in there. And I told her when she got down there to go up to the left and get up on that hill about halfway, and she could see all down in that bottom. She could see both other hollers coming in, and very good area to hunt. I had killed several deer. Other club members had killed deer out there. So it's a very good place to hunt. I went above the lake because I knew too, above the lake there was a lot of deer activity in that area. And so, and like I said, I think we got there about 3 in the afternoon. So right there at dark, I started coming out, and she knew, she carried a little flashlight, and she'd been hunting a lot of times before, so she already knew how to do about hunting. So I get back up on by the spillway and start walking up the road toward the truck, and I noticed she's already in the truck. Didn't think nothing much about it. I get up to the truck, and the truck's locked. I pick on the window, and she unlocks the truck, and I said, "What you doing with the truck locked?" "Well, I seen something a while ago and down that holler," and I said, "What do you mean you seen something?" She said, "Well, I seen something kind of brownish looking, kind of come across the top of one of those ridges," and she said it kind of made its way around. She said, "I just get glimpses of it." And she said, "I was thinking a bear," but she said, "What unnerved me," she said, "this thing went all the way behind me and got in behind me and then started coming toward me." I said, "Well, that was strange there." She said, "Whatever it was circling, then it came in behind me." And she said, "It just kind of unnerved me." She said, "I could hear it kind of coming my way slowly." And she said, "I finally just got up and, started coming on toward the truck." And she said, "Whatever it was stayed up on top of that hill out of sight, but she said, I could tell it kind of walked with me." And I said, "Well, that is strange." And I will say this, deer have been known to do that, a buck deer, but I don't know, she just didn't feel right about it. So the other thing I was thinking about was me and her went back one weekend to camp out to hunt at the lake. And that's what I was going to tell you about. Some other people have camped out there before. Me and her went up there one Friday evening. Her stepdaughter was going to her dad's house that day, and we decided we was going to go camp out, get up next morning, and hunt all day. So we went up there, and there's a little point on the lake that a lot of people camp at, and we set up our tent and got our stove set up, and we had a dog at the time. His name was Dakota. He was a Brittany Spaniel, and he was a young dog. Like I said, I grew up in a family that done a lot of quail hunting, so we kept a lot of bird dogs around. And right in that time period, me and my dad had lost one of our better bird dogs. He died of old age, and at that time, I had a friend that had some Brittany's, and I'd had a Brittany before, and I liked them. They're good handling dogs, so I got this puppy, and I actually gave it to my first wife, before we got married, so it had, lived with her some. Well, we went up there at night, set up camp, like I said, and we cooked us some supper, and we was sitting out there, and all of a sudden, this dog just went ballistic. And I'm sitting here watching him. He is bristled up. He's raising Cain, and it's like he's watching something. I can watch him turning his head. I said, what's that dog looking at? Of course, I took my flashlight, shined all over. I ain't seen nothing. I'd get him to calm down, and it'd be all right for about 10 minutes or so. Then he'd start back, and this time he'd be looking in another direction. And then one time he turned around and was barking across the lake. And I'd take my light and I'd shine everywhere, wouldn't see nothing. I said, well, I don't know what's over here. Well, me and her got ready, it was getting on late, and we got ready to go to bed. And of course, we was going to let him sleep outside right in front of the tent, because he wasn't one of those type run off. And we laid in there sleeping, but every few minutes he'd just get tore up, go to barking, carrying on. I'd have to get out and calm him down. We finally brought him in the tent to see if that would help. And darn, he wouldn't settle down in there the whole time. He set up, and his head just turning the whole time. And I'm like, what is this dog looking at? And of course, in my mind, I thought maybe some coyotes were coming up or something. Well, I noticed in the distance I could hear thunder. And I said, oh boy. I said, I didn't know we had a storm coming up tonight. And this was back before we had cell phones that could tell you the weather. And I don't remember even watching the weather that day at home or checking the weather. So, of course, I could hear the thunder coming from toward the river. River's about 4 miles away, and I could hear the thunder. And then I could start seeing the lightning flash. And this was in January, so we was having a good thunderstorm coming. And I told my wife then, I said, we may be fixing to get wet. Of course, the dog is still tore up. He's just barking like crazy. He just won't settle down. And I finally said, well, I'll tell you what, I said, he's not settling down. We got a storm coming. I said, and the wind had done started picking up. And I said, we better just go ahead and pack up real quick and get on to the house before it gets here. There's no sense getting, soaking wet. So we get out of the tent, and of course he won't go nowhere. He stays right with us. He stays right over there by my ex-wife the whole time while I'm loading the truck. It's like he's guarding her, and he's paying attention to me, and he's looking in the woods. And of course, I'm not really getting no bad vibes or nothing. I just, loading the truck, and of course I get the truck loaded, and it starts sprinkling. And we jump up in the truck, and we put him on up in the cab. Most of the time he'd rode in the back. So you know how outside dog is, they don't smell too good. And we get him on up in the truck, and this dog's even still growling going up the road, looking out the window. And me and her talked about that on the way home. I said, I ain't never seen a dog act like that in the woods before. So, of course we went on home, kind of over time, kind of forgot about it. So, not sure what that was. Of course, in my mind, I figured it was the boogers coming up checking us out. And I believe that's what he was doing. He was following them. He was seeing them. He was watching them probably step behind from tree to tree. And that's why he stayed toward it. He knew that wasn't right, and he was being protective. And he just wasn't letting his guard down. And, I done seen this. This was going to go on all night with him, And so, I think that was the better move that night going on home, especially about once we got to the gate to unlock it and had to hit the highway, buddy. It come a rain, it wouldn't wait. One of them, gully washers. And I told her, I said, boy, I'm glad we went on to the house. We're heading to the house. So there's another incident. So there's really 4, I guess you would say, that I've had up there that just was very odd. Now the other thing that I did mention, that there's some paranormal stuff up there. We've seen the little white orbs floating around. We've heard voices up there before. Nobody be around that. That could have been a Bigfoot too. I don't know. But also, my good friend Jonathan Odom you know, seeing something square floating around. I mean, he's got it on his Alabama Bigfoot Paranormal page. Several years ago, you probably could, you know, scroll back and find it, but I mean, it's just wild. It's something square just floating around on top of that lake. So there is some paranormal up there, or something. There's something up there. There's one guy in the club that claimed for years. And you'll hear about him on down in some of the videos, because he comes in with us and starts researching, because he lives at the foot of the club, and they'd had some stuff going on that I found out later, and I'll be telling you about some of his stuff too. But he always told me about hearing what sounded like a gate shutting up there at night, like a big door with chains. He said it's just crazy. I never have heard that, but I'm taking him at his word that he heard it several times. It would sound just like the chains would start turning and the door would open, and then a few minutes later it would shut. And it was just, I don't know, just, you know. Of course, I told you about, you know, back in the early 1900s, you know, a family that lived up there having an encounter. So, you know, where the one attacked the house, you know. So there's a lot of history on that mountain and some stuff prior. And just like I said, there'd been some people, other people that have camped at that lake talking about strange things happening at night. You know, just hearing different things, and you know, just different things happening, just kind of unexplainable. Next week, I'll get into me and Keith starting our research, and what we started doing, you know, talking to Mr. Tall and different things we could try, and what started happening is over time you'll see that pattern. Like I told you in the last video, I had to kind of figure out how to start this. So when I thought about telling you about some of the prior things that we didn't know was Bigfoot, but now we know it may have been. I mean, I still can't prove that, but I think that's what that was. I think I was already experiencing them and just wasn't realizing it. And that's something that I have come to learn. And of course, you always know I'll never say I'm an expert. I'm just an old country boy that just happened to step in the middle of it. I don't know if the Lord meant me to step into it, or if it was just what the deal was. I mean, I was trying to remember how old I was when I seen my first Bigfoot. I can't remember. That was 2007, so I was born in '68. So yeah, in my 40s. Yeah. So oh no, excuse me. Right, I was close to 40. Yeah, there we go. Had to sit here and think a minute, but I'd been in the woods a lot my whole life. Like I told you, I grew up in a family that was hunters, fishermen, trappers, farmers. So we was in the outdoors all the time. Talking about that, I'll tell you this real quick. When I was young, we were camping down on a place called Paint Creek down in Coosa County. And back then, a lot of land you could access pretty easy. And there was what they call just primitive camping grounds everywhere along the creeks and rivers. And just one place we went, me and my mother and dad and my uncle and a couple of cousins went. And we done some night fishing. And me and my uncle and my two cousins slept in back of the truck. And I remember getting woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna say it's about 3. And there's a big oak tree that was over us, and I remember the limbs shaking in that oak tree. And I remember waking my uncle up and saying, "Hey, there is something in this tree above us." And he kind of grunted, and he said, "Oh, it's probably a coon or animal done crawled up there looking down on us." And I just remember that. I mean, that was strange. I remember the whole, it seemed like the whole tree was shaking, you know. Next morning, I mentioned it to my dad because him and my mom and somebody else was on. They had, you know, they had slept in the car. But Daddy had a big old Bonneville Pontiac, and if you know about them old 70 cars, Lord, you could stretch out one of them things, somebody in the front seat, somebody in the back seat. You know, I mean, Lord, it's about like a bed, you know, big as them cars were. So I remember mentioning to my dad the next morning about something was up in that tree, and he said, well, I don't know what that could have been, son. He said, but he said, you know, but he said, you know, during the night I heard something down here pilfering around, because, you know, we'd left the table out with cookware, and he said, you know, I heard something pilfering around the table, but he said, I figured it was a coon or possum, you know, looking for scrap. So he said, I didn't think much else about it. So I don't know, you know, there's one of those things that you never know what it really was, and you know, it could have been just a coon or possum fooling around there at night, but it's just strange. That's one of those things that stick in your head the rest of your life. I mean, you just open your eyes and you're looking straight up, and the whole tree seemed like it's shaking. No wind, because I kind of raised up, looking around, there wasn't no wind blowing. I mean, I remember that well. I wasn't 12, 13 years old. It was just strange, you know. And my uncle didn't seem to think a whole lot about it, and I trusted him a lot. So, you know, I went on back to sleep, you know, and didn't think nothing else about it. So, well, I hope you've enjoyed today. I gave you a little more possible encounters that happened prior to us knowing that that we had the Bigfoot on the hunting club. And like I told you before, I was trying to figure out how to start this off, and I thought this was a good way to start it off, to show you that there was stuff going on up there before we even knew what it was. I think that's one thing, is us humans, sometimes we get we get comfortable in our settings, and we quit paying attention to things as much. I think that's why a lot of people never really see Bigfoot. I think they have encounters, but they just don't really know they're having an encounter, because one thing, science tells you that they're supposed to not exist. Number two, you know, everybody don't see Bigfoot all the time. I mean, I think I've been real fortunate. You know, I've seen them 4 or 5 times. So I think when you really go to paying attention and watching your surroundings and what's going on, you start seeing them. I know some people have been researching all their life and ain't seen a Bigfoot yet. Now, they've had a lot of encounters and weird stuff happen, but they ain't seen a Bigfoot. I don't know why. Like I told you before, I don't know why I've been able to see them 4 or 5 times, maybe 6. I don't know. I think I've got glimpses of them before. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the Lord showing me something. Maybe He was prepping me for not to listen to all of the stuff that's always been told by the so-so experts, you know. But like I said, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Leave me a comment, like, subscribe, share. Tell me what you like hearing, you know. And like I said, I hope you have a good Memorial Day weekend, and remember all the servicemen and women that sacrificed themselves for this country. I have a lot of family that's veterans. My dad's World War II veteran, had an uncle that's POW in World War II, a lot of cousins that went to Korea and Vietnam. And then some nephews and stuff that went to Iraq, and a lot of them got to come home safe. And a lot of guys and women didn't. So just remember that. That's what this weekend's really about. And I hope all y'all have a good day. And we'll see you next time on Fireside Tales from Cedar Creek Bottoms Farmstead. Bye-bye.